Thanksgiving Day. The smell of roasting turkey, sage stuffing, and simmering betrayal. Every year, my home, the beautiful, sprawling property I built with my own two hands, was the center of our family's celebration. But this year, the warmth of the fire was a lie, and the joy on my family's faces was sickening. My son, David, and my daughter, Leda, had become masters of cruelty, treating me and their own flesh and blood like outsiders. The core conflict was simple: money. After the passing of my beloved wife 2 years ago, I became the sole trustee of the family estate, making David and Leda dependent on my quarterly disbursements. They hated the control. And they saw me and, most tragically, my recently estranged grandson, Liam, as obstacles to their full inheritance. Liam, my 20-year-old grandson, had suffered a public falling out with his father, David, and was currently living in a cheap, unheated apartment nearby. I had secretly been helping Liam, but my children forbade me from having him in the house, fearing he would cut into their share. I had hoped, naively, that on a day dedicated to gratitude, they would relent. I had pleaded with Leda, "It's freezing outside. Let Liam come in for one meal." Leda's response, delivered with a smug toss of her hair, was final. "No, Dad. He's outside because he made his choices. Let him freeze. It's a good life lesson." I watched through the panoramic dining room window as Liam stood shivering on the cold, shadowed driveway, peering longingly at the festive light streaming from the house, clutching a backpack. Inside, David was carving the turkey, Leda was toasting their perfect lives, and Liam, my grandson, was freezing. At that moment, the love I once held for my children shattered completely. The pain gave way to a cold, hard clarity. They weren't just spoiled, they were inhuman. I quietly reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone, and sent a single text to my lawyer. The message was short, brutal, and entirely focused on justice. It's time. Execute the trust revocation immediately. Sending that text to my lawyer, Mr. Stern, felt like sealing a pact with the devil, but it was the only way to save my soul from the coldness of my own blood. After Liam finally walked off the driveway, shivering and defeated, I returned to the dining room table, forcing a smile. The air, thick with the scent of butter and herbs, was also heavy with their expectant greed. David, my son, was already talking about the upcoming renovations on his vacation home, implicitly budgeting with the quarterly trust fund payment I was about to cut off. Leda, ever the opportunist, was bragging about a new designer handbag, emphasizing how expensive my trust fund payments made her life. Every word they spoke, every satisfied bite of turkey was a fresh wound, but now every wound solidified my resolve. I had spent 2 years watching the slow decay. After their mother died, I restructured the $15 million family estate into a complex trust, ensuring they received funds only as long as I deemed them responsible and capable of managing their own lives. This was meant to be a safety net, but they treated it as a guaranteed, unconditional ATM. The tension had been rising for months, starting with David demanding a premature, lump sum payout to invest in a terrible cryptocurrency scam. When I refused, he started openly disrespecting me, leading to the devastating fight that resulted in him disowning his own son, Liam. Leda, who once loved her nephew, stood by David because he promised her a cut of his anticipated payout. They were a unified front of pure entitlement. I remember Leda looking at me just last week, demanding, "When are you going to stop babysitting the money, Dad? It's our inheritance." She was blinded by her desire to liquidate the estate and buy a specific waterfront condo, the ultimate status symbol. They had completely forgotten the core values I tried to teach them: family, gratitude, and hard work. They viewed Liam's poverty, which was the result of a stupid youthful argument, as a necessary sacrifice for their own financial gain. As David finished carving the turkey, handing Leda the first slice, I watched them exchange a smug, self-satisfied look, a look that said, "We won. We are inside, and the failure is outside."
This was the tipping point. I excused myself, went into the library, and checked my phone. A single message from Mr. Stern read, "Trust revocation officially filed and sealed. Effective end of business day. Contingency A is ready." Contingency A wasn't just cutting off their money, it was the mechanism to legally transfer my entire portion of the estate, the majority share, into a new, separate foundation. I took a deep breath, walked back to the dining room, sat down, and looked directly at David and Leda. The turkey was now cold on their plates, and the festive air had curdled into the heavy silence of impending doom. I knew what I had to do next, and it would destroy their holiday and their lives forever.
I sat down at the table, the sight of the perfectly cooked turkey nauseating me. The moment had arrived. David and Leda were still talking, completely oblivious, already planning how to spend money that was, at that very moment, slipping through their greedy fingers. I raised my wine glass, not for a toast, but for silence. "I have an announcement to make," I said, my voice cutting through their cheerful chatter like a surgical steel knife. David looked annoyed. Leda rolled her eyes. They thought I was going to give one of my long, sentimental grandfatherly speeches. They were wrong. Today, on Thanksgiving, I found myself thinking deeply about gratitude. I began. I thought about the family legacy, about responsibility, and about the trust I established to protect those values. David, realizing the topic was about money, suddenly perked up. "Good. So the quarterly wire will be hitting tomorrow, right, Dad? I really need that deposit for the new boat." His immediate focus on material greed after leaving his nephew freezing outside solidified my fury. I smiled, a cold, empty smile. "No, David, the quarterly wire will not be hitting tomorrow. In fact, there will be no more wires, ever." The silence that followed was deafening. Leda dropped her fork with a metallic clang. Her perfect, manicured face went instantly pale. "What are you talking about, Dad?" David finally managed to sputter. "The trust, it's irrevocable. You can't just stop the payments." This was the turning point, the moment I shattered their illusion of entitlement. I pulled out the neatly folded document Mr. Stern had sent, the trust revocation statement, and slid it across the mahogany table. Read Clause 17. The trust may be terminated and the assets transferred back to the settler if, in the settler's sole and written discretion, the beneficiaries display sustained and profound moral turpitude inconsistent with the core values of the estate. I leaned back, letting the legal jargon sink in. "Your mother and I put that clause there specifically to prevent people like you from running the family name into the ground with irresponsible greed." Leda snatched the paper, her eyes scanning the text frantically. "This is a lie. You can't do this," she screamed, tears of pure, desperate rage welling up. David, however, was focused on the biggest secret of all. "If the trust is revoked, where does the money go? It's still in the bank." He was right. The cash was still there. This was the moment for the shocking truth. I looked David straight in the eye and delivered the final, devastating sentence. The trust assets, the entire remaining $15 million estate, were officially transferred this afternoon to the newly established Liam's Future Foundation. The reaction was volcanic. David slammed his fist on the table, sending glasses rattling. "You gave Liam everything? That disrespectful failure? He's just a tramp." Leda was screaming, her voice a shrill, hysterical sound that was completely unrecognizable. "He's not even your son. You can't give everything to Liam. You're insane." She had exposed the core of their malice. Their hatred for Liam was based entirely on the fear that he would steal their money. I stood up,
walked to the panoramic window, and pointed outside to the spot where Liam had been standing just an hour before. He was freezing outside on Thanksgiving while you ate turkey and called his suffering a life lesson, Leda. That, right there, was the profound moral turpitude I needed to execute this clause. The money is gone. Everything is Liam's now. This is my house, and I want you both off my property forever.
The dining room immediately turned into a battle zone, but their fury was just the final, pathetic act of entitlement. David screamed about legal action, threats of challenging my mental competency, and demanding a full accounting. Leda, having thrown her wine glass against the wall, was now hysterically sobbing, not out of sadness, but from the sudden sharp realization that her waterfront condo and her designer life had evaporated. "You can't do this to me," she shrieked, grasping my arm. "I'm your daughter. He's just a brat. That money is mine." Her utter lack of humanity, even as she faced ruin, was my fuel. I shook off her grip and walked to the wall, where a simple, secure safe was hidden behind a painting. I opened it and pulled out two things: a pre-signed, notarized quitclaim deed and a sealed, certified letter. "The transfer is complete, Leda. The foundation owns everything now." I looked at David, who was breathing heavily, his face twitching. "And as for your empty threats, David, you should know that 2 months ago I was diagnosed with a non-life-threatening but debilitating condition. I used that event to update my will, and in doing so, I had 3 independent neurologists confirm my absolute mental competency. The letter in my hand is their certified opinion, legally sealed. Any attempt to challenge me will fail and cost you what little savings you have left." I delivered the final, devastating blow. I held up the deed. "This house, the property you're standing on, was held in the trust. It now belongs to Liam's foundation. You are both trespassing. You have 1 hour to vacate the premises, or the new legal owner, represented by my lawyer, Mr. Stern, will have you forcibly removed." I then pointed towards the driveway, the spot where Liam had frozen hours ago. "Go. You can start building your life from scratch, just like you wanted Liam to do. Consider this your life lesson." Their perfect, entitled lives were over, and the feeling was not triumphant, but a profound, necessary relief. The true resolution was delivered the next day. I personally drove to Liam's freezing apartment. He was sitting on a stained couch, wrapped in a blanket, trying to study. I sat down beside him, handed him the phone, and gave him the account login for the foundation, showing him the $15 million balance. Liam didn't cry or shout. He stared at the screen, tears silently tracing paths down his face. I explained everything: the years of greed, the Thanksgiving betrayal, and the reason why his grandparents created the moral turpitude clause. "This money isn't just a gift, Liam. It's justice. It's your opportunity to build a life based on genuine values, something your father and Leda completely forgot." Liam looked at me, then pulled me into a deep, shaking hug, a hug filled with more warmth than I had felt from my own children in years. That hug, right there, was the climax of my revenge, the moment the cold fury finally turned into the warm satisfaction of having protected the truly innocent and punished the truly cruel. Thanksgiving Day had ended the life my children thought they deserved, but it began the life my grandson, Liam, truly earned. I found a profound peace in the chaos I created. The freezing wind that chilled Liam on my driveway was the moral turpitude I needed to execute justice. David and Leda were left with the cold reality of their own greed. They tried to sue, of course, wasting what little money they had left on a futile legal challenge that Mr. Stern dismissed in a single afternoon, thanks to the certified competency letters I had prepared. They lost the house, they lost their allowance, and they lost their arrogance. Michael, who refused to lift a finger for Liam, now has to work 3 minimum-wage jobs just to pay his rent. Leda, the girl who demanded luxury, is living in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment with her equally spoiled husband. I don't see them, I don't call them. The relationship is permanently severed, not by my choice, but by their profound lack of love and humanity. My life is now focused on the Liam Future Foundation. Liam is now a trustee, learning about ethical finance and using the wealth responsibly. He has a comfortable apartment, he's back in school, and his focus is on genuine hard work, not inheritance. The hug he gave me that day in his freezing apartment was worth more than the entire $15 million estate. I realized that my wife and I hadn't raised entitled children. We had simply raised children who chose entitlement over empathy. My revenge was ultimately an act of redemption, securing the legacy we intended for the one person who still carried the family's true values. The moral of the story? The world often teaches us to value blood ties above all else, but sometimes blood is just water spoiled by greed. My children's cruelty, forcing their cousin to freeze outside while they feasted, proved that a legal document cannot force morality or love. The lesson here is paramount. Trust funds should always prioritize character over birthright. I learned that the most effective way to fight entitlement is not with harsh words, but with a surgical legal mechanism that makes the perpetrator's own moral failing the instrument of their financial ruin. I didn't destroy my children, they destroyed themselves. I just signed the paperwork. Closure and final thought. I sit in my small, quiet apartment now. I sold the big house to the foundation, and I have never been happier. I have peace, dignity, and a relationship with the grandson who truly deserved my love. The estate is secure, the wicked were punished, and the righteous are thriving. My final, true victory was turning a Thanksgiving day of chilling betrayal into a lifetime of warm, honest justice. If you thought my daughter Leda was cold, wait until you hear the story of the man whose son changed his father's medical directive on his deathbed just to steal his business. His revenge was so devastating, he signed over the company to the nursing home staff who actually cared for him. Subscribe to Iron Revenge and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story of ultimate family justice.